I have been trying to write this for 8 months. I have started it 17 times on 17 different nights, sitting at the same kitchen counter where it all finally ended. And every time I got 3 sentences in, I closed the notebook and put it away because the words felt too small for what I actually did. But I have decided that small words told honestly are better than silence. So here it is, the whole thing, the version where I am not the sympathetic one. My name is Rachel. I am 36 years old, and I spent 4 years slowly, carelessly, consistently destroying the best man I have ever known, and I did it with jokes. That is the sentence I could not say for the longest time. Not to my mother, who would have defended me. Not to my best friend, who would have found a way to split the blame evenly. Not even to myself in the quiet, honest hours before sleep. Because the mind is remarkably skilled at protecting us from the things we are not yet ready to carry. I told myself I was funny. I told myself he knew I didn't mean it. I told myself that a man who never complained was a man who wasn't hurt. I was wrong about all 3. His name was Marcus. We met at 26 at a mutual friend's rooftop party in July, and I remember thinking he was the most unhurried person I had ever encountered. Not slow, unhurried. There is a difference. Slow people make you wait. Unhurried people make you feel like there is nowhere else worth being. He had dark eyes and a quiet laugh, and he listened to people, the way most people only pretend to, with his full attention, without waiting for his turn to speak. I fell in love with him over the course of one summer and married him 3 years later in a small ceremony in his parents' backyard. And for the first 2 years, I loved him with the whole uncomplicated weight of someone who knows exactly what they have. Then life got ordinary. And ordinary, I have learned, is where most damage is done. Not in the dramatic moments, not in the fights or the crises, but in the slow erosion of daily carelessness. In the way you stop saying thank you for the things that happen consistently. In the way familiarity curdles, almost imperceptibly, into something that looks like contempt. I started making jokes at his expense sometime in year 3. I cannot point to the exact moment because there wasn't one. It was a gradual drift, the way a boat moves off course, not because of a single wave, but because nobody was watching the compass. It started as a comment at dinner with friends about a wrong turn he had taken on the way to the restaurant. Small, harmless. The table laughed. Marcus laughed. I felt that quick, warm spark of being the funny one and stored it away without examining it. Then it was his cooking. Then it was his sense of direction. Then it was a story I told at my company's holiday party about how he had been passed over for a promotion, which was true, but which was not my story to tell. And certainly, on that particular hour, I needed him in that room, not for myself, but for her. She deserved to be welcomed into the world by both her parents, regardless of what existed between them. He held her first while the nurses tended to me. I watched his face from across the room, and I recognized what happened to it. It was identical to the expression he had worn in the ultrasound room. Complete, defenseless, total love. The kind that arrives without permission and never fully leaves. I did not know whether to find comfort in that or to grieve it. The paternity test results came back 6 weeks later. They confirmed what I had already known. Mara's son was born the following spring. His name is Owen. There was no clean, cinematic moment where I made my decision. No final conversation, no dramatic door closing, no single line that resolved everything. What happened was slower and stranger and far more human than that. It happened in the middle of the night when Lily wouldn't sleep, and I had been walking the hallway for 40 minutes. And Daniel appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled, eyes half open, and held out his arms in a silent offer to take her so I could rest. It happened at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning when he showed me a letter he had written, not to me, but to Lily, telling her what he had done, why it was wrong, and why he hoped she would never make the same choice, because the cost was something he would spend the rest of his life paying. It happened in the small beige office of a couples therapist, week after week, where we said things out loud that we had never said in 6 years of marriage, things that had nothing to do with Mara, and everything to do with the quiet distance that had grown between us long before she ever appeared. I did not forgive Daniel because he had earned it. I want to be honest about that. He had not earned it, not fully, maybe not ever completely. I forgave him because I decided that my daughter would not grow up watching her mother carry a wound like a weapon. I forgave him because when I looked honestly at what we had built, not the fantasy of it, not the version we performed for other people, but the actual imperfect, daily reality of it, I found that it still held something worth fighting for. Owen is 2 years old now. Lily is almost 3. They have met once, briefly. Daniel handled the exchange in a parking lot while I waited in the car. I watched him kneel down to speak to a small boy with his chin and his eyes, and I felt something move through me that I cannot cleanly name even now. It was grief and acceptance and sorrow and something that was almost peace. All of it braided together so tightly I couldn't separate the threads. Mara and I are not friends. We will never be friends. But we have arrived at the particular, hard-won civility of two women who understand that they are permanently connected through no choice of their own, and that the children between them thought it was ordinary silence. I thought about what I wanted for breakfast the next morning. I thought about a work email I had forgotten to answer. I did not once think about the look on my husband's face, because I had trained myself over 4 years not to. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning in early November, I came downstairs and found the kitchen spotless, the coffee made, and a white envelope on the counter with my name on it in Marcus's handwriting. I knew before I opened it. His side of the closet was not empty, just thinned. Enough clothes gone to be intentional. His overnight bag, the books from his nightstand, the small framed photograph of his parents that he kept on the corner of his desk. He had taken nothing that was mine. He had left nothing in disorder. He had removed himself from our shared space with the same consideration. He had brought to every single thing he had ever done for me, completely, and without making a mess for me to clean up. I stood at the counter for a long time before I opened the letter. It was 4 pages, handwritten on the yellow legal pad he used for everything. I will not share all of it here because some of it is mine alone to carry. But there are 2 sentences I will carry publicly for as long as I live, because they are the truest and most painful thing anyone has ever said to me. He wrote, "I never needed you to think I was the most impressive man in every room. I only ever needed you to be glad I was yours. And somewhere along the way, Rachel, I stopped feeling like you were." I read those words standing at the kitchen counter in the early morning quiet, and something in my chest broke open in a way I had not felt since my father died. Not because they were cruel, they weren't. Because they were completely, irrefutably true. And because I understood in that moment, with a clarity that had no mercy in it, that I had been given something rare and had treated it like it was ordinary, that I had stood beside a man who loved me with his whole quiet heart, and I had made him into a joke, repeatedly, in front of people, for years, and he had endured it with grace and waited, and hoped I would eventually choose differently, and I never had. I called him. He answered on the second ring, which told me something about who he still was even then. We talked for 2 hours, not arguing, not negotiating, just talking the way we had somehow never managed to talk. During 4 years of marriage, he was not cold. He was not performatively wounded. He was exactly what he had always been, clear and honest and kind in a way. That made everything harder, not easier. He said he still loved me. He said that was not the question. The question, he said quietly, was whether I could see him, actually see him without an audience, without the need to be the funny one, and whether I was willing to do the work to understand why I couldn't. He said he had waited a long time hoping the answer would show up on its own. He said he was tired of waiting. I want to tell you I said the perfect thing, that I immediately understood and immediately changed, and the story resolved into something redemptive and whole. But I have promised myself to tell this honestly, and the honest version is that I spent the first month bargaining. The second month angry, genuinely, irrationally angry at him for leaving so quietly, as though the quietness itself was a cruelty, which I recognize now was a spectacular act of self-deception. It was only in the 3rd month, sitting across from a therapist in a small office with a window that looked out onto a parking lot. hearing myself describe my marriage out loud for the first time. That I understood what I had actually done. I had made him small in public because it made me feel large. I had used his dignity as raw material for my own social comfort, and I had justified it for years with his silence, as though the absence of complaint is the same as the absence of pain, as though a person who loves you enough to absorb your cruelty is a person who isn't being hurt by it. That is not how it works. That is not how any of it works. Marcus and I are not together. I want to tell you that plainly, without softening it, because you deserve the real ending. We tried, both of us, honestly and carefully. For several months after that November morning, we went to counseling. We had the conversations we had never had. There were weeks that felt like genuine recovery. But there are certain kinds of damage that change the shape of something permanently, not because the love isn't real anymore, but because trust, once broken in a particular way, leaves a scar that both people can feel, even on the good days. We both knew it. We were honest with each other about it. We ended things with a kindness that felt like the most mature either of us had ever been. And also the saddest. What I can tell you is that I am not the same woman who made those jokes. Not because I was punished into changing. Punishment alone never changes anyone deeply. But because I finally paid the full price of my carelessness and understood, in my bones rather than just my head, what it had cost. I understand now that the quiet ones are not small, that a man who refills your glass before you notice it's empty is performing a kind of love that the loudest people in the room will never manage. That steadiness is not the absence of passion. It is passion with discipline. It is love that decided to show up and kept deciding. Every single day until I made it impossible. I think about Marcus often. I hope he is somewhere being seen clearly. I hope someone is noticing the notes he leaves, the soup he learned to make from scratch, the way he listens with his whole unhurried attention. I hope she tells him out loud in public, in front of everyone, that she is glad he is hers. I should have told him that 1,000 times. Instead, I told a table full of people that he was comfortable where he was. He deserved so much better than the version of love I knew how to give then. And the heaviest, most honest thing I can say, the thing I will spend a long time sitting with, is that he was patient with me far longer than I deserved. And I wasted every single day of it.